Can you hear me now?
Not yet. 1 second. There we go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you just fine. Is everybody else hearing CJ okay?
You can just, okay, great. Perfect. So you hear me now. A couple quick things. First of all, the majority of our webinar today is going to be PowerPoint slides. So you will not have to look at this giant dome of mine for very long. And believe me, I've tried to figure out how I can shoot my head from an angle where it looks like a normal person's head, and it does not work. I've tried it from the back, from the side, from the front, and as my children tell me, I have the largest head known to man. Number one. Number two, when Michael refers to the Google chat box up in the right-hand corner, up in the left-hand corner, excuse me, that won't normally show on your screen unless you move your cursor to the far left of your screen, and then it appears. So if you don't see it, you have to move your cursor all the way to the far left, and then all of a sudden that thing appears. All right, so I'm excited to have everyone on with us today. It's our second webinar. We are becoming webinar experts. Yeah, that's probably a stretch. We are becoming very good at webinars, and one day we'd like to become webinar experts. I'm going to go ahead now and begin sharing the screen. I'm going to talk for about 35 minutes today, and then we're going to open it up for a Q&A time here in just a minute. Michael, can you put yours on mute, if you don't mind? Because I hear a little background.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to head off to you here.
Okay. All right, so here I go. I am going to share a screen, everyone. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see that screen. If you cannot see that screen in the chat area, go ahead and say, I cannot see that screen. And I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it, but it'll at least be nice to know that you can't see it. If you can see the screen, just say, yep, got it. That'd be great too. Okay, great. So B Moore's got it. I'm assuming everyone is as smart as B Moore and Jennifer Sprout. Fantastic. All right, so today, what we're going to talk about is this concept of how to get the absolute most out of a 24-hour day. And in reality, it's not really a 24-hour day. We're going to talk about how to get the most out of a work day. And the reason that this has become so critical is because in 2016, this age of information overload, we are being asked to do more and more and more in less and less time. And I've spoken about this to thousands of people. And what I know to be true is that no one believes that all of a sudden this trend is going to reverse itself. And by that, I mean, everyone recognizes that as technology continues to advance, we're going to continually be asked to do more and more and more and more. And then what's happening in addition to this is that we are beginning to feel this emotion called stress and anxiety, and we're beginning to get a little bit overwhelmed. So when I go out and I talk to audiences or companies or whomever I'm in front of, I say, what's your biggest challenge? Not in your office, in your workplace. If it's not some moron coworker that I want to strangle or employee that I want to kill, it's always I'm running out of time. And so what I've learned from coaching and training hundreds of executives and professionals is that if I don't help you get your arms around your time, then nothing else matters, because I can teach anyone how to sell better, be a better leader, all of these different tactics and strategies. But if you don't know how to manage your time, I mean, you're SOL, because you're just not going to get anything done. You'll keep throwing up your hands and going, I don't have enough time to put into practice all those new things I learned. So we're going to start off with this question of how do you define a successful day? And when I ask that question to audiences, the answers I get are all over the place. However, they're typically, I got a lot done, right? I have a to-do list and I checked off all the boxes on that to-do list. Or I had the day and the day seemed really busy. And so what I'd like to start off with here is what I call the definition of a successful day, how I believe that you should judge a really successful day. And the way I judge a successful day is I made meaningful progress towards my most important goals. That's it. I made meaningful progress towards my most important goals. Now, unfortunately, Most people judge their success every day by how hard they work and how tired they are when they go home. So the day ends, you get in your car and you are just absolutely exhausted, and you put your head in your hands and you're like, I must have got a lot done today because I am exhausted. And unfortunately, the truth is that that's not the way it works. Okay. Because I understand that when you walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next thing you know, you look up and it's 6:30 p.m. and you say, what just happened? But I want you to understand something. There is an enormous, humongous difference between being really active on a day-to-day basis and achieving your most important goals. Huge difference. It's the difference between, being exhausted at the end of the day and getting things done that are making meaningful progress towards your goals. I mean, night and day. And so my goal today in the next 30 minutes is to help you understand the best practices for laying out a disciplined workday. And in this disciplined workday, you're going to accomplish the right objectives and leave the office at a reasonable hour. Imagine that. Because this whole concept of I work all the time and that's exactly what I should be doing, I mean, it's just, that's craziness. So today we're going to talk about getting more done in the same amount of time, if not less time. Okay. Now, so let's talk a little bit about how we get going on this. The first thing I want you to understand is that you get into the office at 8 or 7 or 6:30 or whatever time you get into the office in the morning. And what you want to do when you get in there is you want to dive into something. I mean, you want to open that email and you want to dive into something. You want to hit the ground running. And I get it. I mean, you're in the office, there's a lot going on, and you want to hit the ground running and go as fast as humanly possible. I want to have a meeting. I want to respond to emails. I want to dive into my project, whatever it might be. Because you think that the more that I'm making meaningful progress, the more that I'm doing, the more active I am, the better the day is going to go, and the more productive I am, and the more I'm going to get done. And so you have this urge to just dive into it. Now, what I want you to do is I challenge you to resist the urge. I challenge you to just resist that urge to go right out of the office and to bury your head in your work. Instead, I want you to try something different. For the first 5 minutes of every single day, just take out your weekly goals, take out your calendar, step back for a minute, get a little perspective, and say to yourself, what are the 3 most extremely important goals that positively, absolutely must be completed by the time I leave today? Now, here's what's interesting about that. There is a humongous difference between being enormously busy all day long and getting those 3 most important goals done. But I know that everyone on the webinar here today, and every single human being that I've ever talked to in the last 13 years in this business, has gotten to the end of a day or the end of a week, or for God's sakes, the end of a month, and you have worked 60 hours a week and you've just killed yourself for the entire month, but you didn't get the most important things done. And so before you dive into the day, before the day comes at you like a freight train and you're answering emails and doing all this insanity, what I want you to do is to slow down, take a deep breath, and say to yourself, what must be done by 3 p.m. today? What absolutely positively must be done by 3 p.m. today? Now the question becomes, where are you going to write that down? Well, if you write it down on a Post-it note, you're going to lose the Post-it note. If you put it in Outlook somewhere, you're not going to read it. If you put it on a notebook, on a white notebook in your office, guess what? That looks like the other 37 white notebooks in your office. So here's what I recommend that you do. Here's my action item for you today. Find a Moleskine. You know what those notebooks are, the leather notebooks, or a small notebook to use for your to-dos. I make this notebook look different from everything else, and I make it mine happens to be bright orange, okay? And it goes with me everywhere. And my most important to-dos on a day-to-day basis, they go right into this notebook. Now, once you've got your 3 to-dos, okay, so I'm sitting at the office, I've got my 3 to-dos. All right, CJ, congratulations, you've convinced me to get these 3 to-dos. I've got another extremely important challenge, and this challenge is going to sound absolutely insanity to many of you, especially if you're under the age of 35. So if you're a millennial, this is going to sound ludicrous. I challenge you to commit yourself to leaving at a certain time of the day and to agree, I am not going to bring home work tonight. Okay? I mean, I don't care if you have the whole night free. I don't care if your wife's out of town, your kids are out of town, you have nothing to do that night, you can work all night long. I want you to consider a challenge just for today. I'm going to stop working at a certain time and I'm not going to bring my laptop home. This simple commitment will completely change the way you work at your day, the way you look at your day. Because here's what's going to happen. Once you agree to limit the amount of hours you work, instead of simply drifting from project to project, you're going to be focused on a clear mission. Once you know that there's going to be that the amount of hours I'm going to put in today are capped, you're going to begin to do something called prioritize. And when you think I can just bring my laptop home, you do no prioritization. So I'll tell you what this is going to feel like. If you've ever gone on a long vacation, and when I say long, I mean, 5-day vacation, you go on a week vacation and you say to yourself, I probably will check email every now and then, but I'm not going to work this week. And there's 4 or 5 big important projects that need to be done. The Thursday and Friday before you leave on vacation, you are very good at this because you know I'm not going to work next week. And unless we can create some sort of a cap on the amount of hours that you put in, you won't prioritize because you'll always say to yourself, oh, I don't need to prioritize in this because I'll just bring my laptop home. I'll just work at home tonight once the kids go to bed. I'll just watch a little TV, turn on the laptop and work. And then what happens is that you're constantly in this never-ending work cycle. So it's simple, very simple. So I got an action item for you on this one. When you get home tonight, if in fact you do bring your computer home with you, which I'd love for you not to, but if you do, resist the urge to check your email or check off a work to do. Just don't work tonight. Just for one night. Now, of course, there's an asterisk, and the asterisk is if the biggest project of your entire life is due tomorrow and you had already planned to work all night long, okay, do it. But if that isn't the case, why not take this challenge? See what you can do. See how things can be just a little bit different. All right, so now what we do is we've got this thing called crystal clear goals. We know what our top 3 goals are. I mean, we are crystal clear. Listen, I got a whole bunch to do today, but I know what my top 3 goals are. And we also know that I'm only going to work a certain amount of hours. So I know what my top 3 goals are. And I know that I'm only going to work a certain amount of hours. So now all of a sudden, it's time to really dive in. And what we're going to do is we need to begin to do this thing called focusing. Now, I know that everyone on the call today or on the webinar today says, I know what focus means. But you don't, because if you knew what focus means, then for goodness sakes, I'd be out of a job because all of you people would be focused. But now what we have to do is we have to say, okay, I am going to now dive in and focus on the most important thing, minute by minute, hour by hour, so that I make meaningful progress towards my most important goals. Because we know that your time is limited. And in a world where you can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, this very simple process of focus does something powerful. And again, it forces you to prioritize. This simple change in mindset, this simple change is going to radically improve your productivity. I know it. I've seen it time and time and time again. Okay, so now we're clear on what's got to be completed today, and we recognize that we're only going to work so many hours. We're going to dive into some very specific strategies that are going to ensure that you get the most work done possible in the next 8 hours. Okay, we've been talking about theory. Okay, we've been talking from a theoretical standpoint, what can I do? Now we're going to dive a little bit deeper and we're going to begin to talk about what are the specific strategies. The first strategy is I want you to block your schedule. That's our first strategy, block your schedule. Now here's what I mean by blocking your schedule. Look at a calendar, your work calendar. Probably also contains all of your personal stuff. I want you to look at it. And I want you to find a time that's free on that calendar. Now, if you're a high type A personality, high level overachiever, what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to block your schedule from the moment you wake up in the morning until the moment you go to bed at night. Believe me, I did that. It's not healthy. It's not productive. You'll never do it. And all you'll do is make yourself really, really mad all the time. So what I want you to do instead is I want you to find 1 hour. Okay? Just find 1 hour. Maybe if you're really, really ambitious, find 2 hours. go into your calendar and block the hour and say, during this hour, I'm going to do sales. Or during this hour, I am going to review my accounting. Or during this hour, I am going to respond to emails. Whatever it ends up being, just block that time. Now, what I do is I actually do this on Monday for the entire week to the best of my ability. Having said that, the reason I don't necessarily give that advice to everyone is because my week is, unlike many professions, my week is somewhat easy to plan because I have a lot of meetings scheduled and I have a lot of speaking events scheduled. Because of those 2 weeks, my week doesn't get thrown out of whack on Tuesday morning when a client calls and says, I need this immediately. That's just not the business model that I have. But I understand for many companies, I have a lot of construction companies as clients. I tell them to block their schedule on Monday and they look at me and they almost laugh hysterically like, are you going to be kidding me, CJ? Today at 4 o'clock, something's going to happen. It's going to totally change my week. So for many people, what I recommend that you do is you take 1 hour, just 1 hour. And so my action item here is to take that 1 hour for another day this week. Okay. So whether it's, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever it ends up being, take your hour. And I want you to close all of the other applications that don't apply to you. I want you to shut your door. And for that 1 hour, I want you to work on just this thing that you set aside reserve time for. Now, it is going to be extremely difficult. It sounds easy. And right now, some of you are thinking, I cannot believe he gets paid for this bogus advice, but I guarantee you that this will be difficult when you first start doing it. Because what's interesting about this hour is typically the hour that you set aside time and you block will not deliver immediate gratification. So when you say to yourself, I am going to prospect for this hour or review my accounting for this hour or whatever it ends up being, it's rarely something where you're going to be putting out a fire. And you love fighting fires because type A overachievers, we love to fight fires. Fighting fires actually releases some neurochemicals in our brain that makes us feel good. Okay, it's this fight or flight mechanism that we used to have back in the days when we were running from bears and whatever it was that kill us as a caveman. We don't need to run anymore. Maybe some people do. Not all of us need to run, but we still like that adrenaline rush. So some of us like to put out fires all day long. I want to challenge you, take 1 hour, set it aside, and do something very specific 1 day at a time. Now, if you can block out your week a week in advance, that's great. Congratulations. Just not many people can. Okay, now, all the planning in the world, this, people, is not going to do you a bit of good if your day is full of constant interruptions. And here's why that is. When you're working on something that requires your attention and you allow yourself to get distracted, even for 5 seconds, just a few seconds, it takes your brain between 7 and 21 minutes to get back to the same area or the same sense of focus you were at. All right, let me repeat that. When you are working on something that requires your attention, your concentration, your focus, which by the way is about 90% of what it is that you do, unless you are working at McDonald's and you're shaking the fry machine and you got the headset, right? You can do those things, interruption all day long, because they don't require concentration, they don't require focus. But most of you all of us are professionals. We have to focus from time to time. I want you to remember that when you get distracted, even for a few seconds, it takes your brain between 7 and 21 minutes before you're back to where you're at. Now, some of you are going to call bullcrap, and I get it. You can go Google it. How long? Don't Google now. Please, I beg you, don't Google now. But you can go Google it later and say, how long does it take for our brain to get back focused when we get distracted? There's a whole bunch of research out there. And it's true. Because whenever you come into work really early on a Saturday morning or a Monday morning or whatever it is, or you come in on the weekends, you know how much you get done? You get a ton done because you have no distractions. I once had an executive at a large professional services firm say in front of all of the other executives, I think there was 15 people in the room, he boasted, I love this. Let's call him Bob. Bob got up in front of the room and boasted to everyone, I get more done on Saturday by noon than I do throughout the entire week. I mean, he was bragging about it. And I said, Bob, why don't you create some of that during the week? Why don't you figure out a way to not be so distracted? Now, the reason we get distracted so much is, number one, technology allows us to interact with everyone else in the office every second of every minute of every day. Number two, because technology is so amazing and so it's everywhere. We believe that I should be multitasking and allowing myself to be distracted all day long because I've got the technology. I've got the phone, I've got the computer, I've got the text, I've got the goofy chat messages. I've got some companies have these chat programs which allow you to just back forth with people all day long. That's the dumbest idea known to man, by the way. Some of you who do that, I can have an offline conversation with you about why that almost never works. And so we've got all this technology. It forces us to believe that if I'm not constantly in communication with other people, I'm missing out on something. And so we think if I've got 4 or 5 different communication tactics or strategies going on, and I got 4 monitors up or 2 monitors or whatever it ends up being, and I'm back and forth between everything, I feel like I'm flying a 747, right? And I'm so productive and I'm getting all this stuff done. You're not. Okay, you're not productive at all. And the next thing is, believe it or not, and the research is pretty clear on this, you're addicted, it's not you, it's we. I'm right there with you. We are addicted to interruptions or distractions. And if you're below the age of 35, and again, I'm not picking on millennials because I love this generation. They're ridiculously talented and sharp and inventive. But we're becoming addicted to interactions. And if you don't think you are, what I want you to do is because what's happening right now when you're listening to this riveting webinar, everyone has their email open. I know it because when I'm on webinars, I got my email open in case the dude stinks. I want you to turn your email off for a second. Your brain will begin to slow down and you will begin to itch for the next interruption. It's fascinating to watch it happen. So here's my action item for you today. I want you to pay attention to anything that distracts you throughout the day. Whatever the distraction is, someone walking in your office, whatever it ends up being, and I just want you to jot down on a piece of paper. And at the end of the day, I want you to look at everything that distracted you. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the 3 primary distractions that you have to deal with during a typical day. Distraction number 1 is human beings. You know what human beings are, right? It's that person who stops by your office and says, do you have a minute? Do you have a second? What do you say to that person? I mean, unless you're a jerk, you say, sure, come on in. I was just on Facebook. I was just goofing off. Interrupt me. Sit down. Take a load off. Let's have a conversation. You're too nice to tell them to get out of your office and to scram. So you listen to their question or their comment, and then you go back to work. And guess what? As soon as they leave your office, I don't care how long they were there, guess how long it takes you to get refocused on what was happening. And we've all got that guy in our office who loves to wander around and tell us about how great his kids are doing in sports. Or we know we've got the person who loves to talk about the Colts game or the, whatever ridiculous television show they're watching. And these are the people that are bored. They like to wander around. And by the way, when I'm in the middle of something boring and one of these people wanders by my office, in an old CJ, I would love to have them come in because it provides me with a distraction that I would like because I'm loving distractions. I'm going to be focused. So what I do is I've got 3 simple strategies for dealing with the issue of human beings. Number 1 strategy, if you have an office door, shut the door. Now, I know what everyone's thinking because I've given this advice for 13 years and I've seen all the gasps and, oh, how dare you? We're an open office environment. All right, here's the deal with your open office environment or your open door policy or whatever it ends up being. If you keep your door open all day long, you feel like you're being collaborative and you feel like you're getting a lot of work done and you feel like you're being a good leader and you feel like you're being a good coworker. And the fact of the matter is you're being a good friend. Okay. Now I always argue to people, if you need more friends, go to church. Okay. But if you want to get work done, when you are doing something that requires concentration, shut your door. Now, I'm not saying that you burrow into your office through the air conditioning vent in the morning, drop down, work all day long, burrow out at night and never speak to anyone. That's not my point. My point is when you are working on something that requires concentration, shut the door. Seems crazy, but I promise you just do it. Now, it is going to offend someone the first time you do it. I promise it will offend someone. And every now and then someone's going to say, oh, CJ's a closed door guy. He's impossible to get in touch with, to sit down and talk to. Well, that's silly. another part of leadership is going out and meeting with people and talking to them, and that's a whole different webinar. But for now, just shut the door. Okay, resist the temptation to allow people to wander in and out of your office, especially the guy who just likes to lean upon the door jamb and start a chit chat. Hey, get a minute. It's killing you. Number two. Now, this is for people in cubes. If you're in cubes, try headphones. So if you're in a cube, put a headphone on, and that indicates to other people, and you're going to need to tell them this, but that indicates to other people I'm in the middle of something. Now, a couple rules with headphones. The data shows, or the research shows, that when you have headphones on and you listen to other people talk, that's multitasking and you can't do it. When you have headphones on and you listen to music with words, that's even multitasking, and it hurts your productivity. What I recommend that you do is you have noise canceling headphones on, which is cancel noise, obviously, for Purdue graduates. All they're doing is canceling noise. Or what I recommend that you do is you put headphones on and you put what I typically do is I put classical music on in the background or jazz music on in the background where I don't know the beat and it's very soft and mellow. So my brain does not pay attention to that. Okay. And the third thing is shut the door, number one, put in headphones, number two. I've had some clients try like a red, yellow, green flag system. And here's what I mean by that. I'm busy, don't come in. Unless the building is on fire, don't you even think of coming into my office or bugging me at my cube. Yellow is I'm focusing, but I'm not so focused on such a critical project that if you need something, you can't bug me. Green is I'm just entering data into a spreadsheet. Bug me all day long if you want. It's no big deal. Come and bug me all day long. Simple rules. So when you put these three simple rules in place, you are going to keep human beings from distracting you all day long. And just you got to trust me, it really works. It absolutely works. So here's my action item. I want you to have a conversation with your team with some of those major distractors and let them know that you're not trying to be an asshole. You're trying to make sure that you get your work done. Just tell them in advance, hey, whenever I'm doing something where I am really in the middle of something, I'm going to have my door shut, the red up, or headphones in. That doesn't mean that I don't like you anymore. That doesn't mean that we're not friends. That doesn't mean that at lunch you can't tell me how your kid scored 2 touchdowns in the game last night. What that means is that at that very moment, unless it's absolutely positively urgent, please allow me to finish what it is that I'm doing. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the next one that I know what many of you are thinking is that's not going to work in your office. It works. Okay, this is not my first rodeo. I've been doing this 13 years. It absolutely positively works, and it will offend someone. I guarantee that too. That's just part of life. Next, the second distraction, which is the telephone. So as you know, when the phone rings, you can see who's calling you. And unless you're my mom or dad, who, by the way, can still not figure out their mobile phones, you recognize this. You recognize that when the phone rings, I can see who's calling me. I have a really crazy novel idea. If you don't recognize the number, you aren't expecting a call, and you are in the middle of concentrating, for the love of God, do not answer the phone. I can tell you stories all day long. I once had a client, CEO of a big firm. We would sit in his office, and I charge a lot of money to meet one-on-one with people. We're sitting in his office. That phone rings. He would take it. It doesn't matter. People would cold call him, and he would have 5-minute conversations with them. He would always take it. And don't you love it when you call someone, they pick up the phone, and you go, do you have a minute? And they're like, no, I'm in the middle of something. What do you want to scream at them? Don't pick up the phone. I mean, come on, use your head. Keep the phone down. Okay, now, are there asterisks to this? Of course, if you're the receptionist, this rule does not apply to you. Number one. Number two, if your largest client says, I am going to call you between 2 and 3 today, take the call. Number three, if another prospect from a 312 area code says, I'm going to call you, and you don't know their number and a 312 pops up on your phone, take the call. But if it's one of your peers who calls you 4 times a day and rarely says anything important, do not answer the phone. Allow it to go to voicemail. Again, life goes on. The same thing applies to texting. When you're about to dive into something that requires your focus, set the phone to stun, set it far away from you, and get to work. Okay, people are annoyed. by me to no end because they text me and I do not text them back immediately. And I can see I can imagine their blood pressure is rising because I'm the one human being on the planet who does not respond to texts right away, because I'm not going to have nonstop, constant text messages with other people. I'm not doing it. It doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible use of my time. It's constantly distracting me. It's just not good for productivity, right? Now, everyone is always thinking right now that you got a boss or your biggest client who sends you, calls you, and texts you, and if you don't get back to them, they flip out. Two things I say to that. Number one, try to retrain them if you can. Hey, if I don't get back to you right away, I'm in the middle of something, I promise I'll get back to you within a couple of hours. If that doesn't work, I would say the genie's out of the bottle on some of your clients, and you just are going to have to let them treat you, like their servant. Okay. But most people are fairly reasonable, believe it or not. If I don't answer the text or if I don't answer the phone, I promise to get back to you right away. Now, my clients know, and this drives my clients crazy every now and then, that if they call, there are times when I will see their number and I'm in the middle of something, I don't take the call, and they know that I could take the call. And I know it burns them up. But I can't allow myself to be disrupted every second of every day just because other people aren't very good at managing their time. That's not the way I work, and that's not the way I want you to work. Again, my job is a little more rigid than yours. I have the ability to do that. You may not. You may be managing a big construction project or whatever it ends up being, and you need to be a little bit more flexible with the phone. I get it. Remember, this is a spectrum. Okay? It's not absolutes. I just want you to tweak this a little bit. So here's my action item. It's a tricky one. When you go to a meeting, and this applies to meetings at work, this applies to the parent-teacher conference, this applies to any meeting that you're going to have this week, do not bring your phone. So if you get there 2 minutes early and someone comes 5 minutes late for the Purdue graduates, you are going to have to sit for 6 minutes without checking your phone and seeing if someone emailed you. I understand everyone's having a heart attack here, but you can do it. I got a lot of faith in you. Just do it for a couple days. All right, major distraction number 3. Let's talk about, it is by far the worst distraction. It's email. Now, before I move on, I'll agree with you. Email has a ton of great uses, a ton of value. I use it every day to communicate real quick messages to the guy who wants to tell me about how great his kid is at sports. I use it to send files. I use it to communicate to a large group of people. But email is crushing your productivity because you always have it open. Be honest. If you have 2 monitors, email is open at all times. Even if you don't have 2 monitors, when that little envelope pops up on the bottom of the screen, you cannot resist the urge to check it. And when you check it and you notice that it's just another update from Crate & Barrel giving you 30% off fall sale, and you delete it, guess how long it takes you to refocus? That's right, 21 minutes. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to recognize that email is killing you. And I want you to recognize that you can't allow your body and your productivity to go back, forth with email all the time. Because I have a news flash. 99.9876% of the professionals on this planet can go 30 minutes without checking their messages with absolutely 0 negative ramifications to their business. And here's why I say this, because everyone who's panicked about turning off their email claim, CJ, if I don't respond to a client within 1 minute, they're going to find a new vendor. You know what I say to you? And again, keep in mind, there are exceptions to this rule. I say this: if you have a client who doesn't value you enough that when you don't get back to them in 1 minute, they get rid of you, that's a terrible client anyways. Getting a new business. Now, again, I'm not saying go the whole day without responding to emails. No, don't go the whole week. I'm saying try, just turn it off when you're in the middle of something that you're concentrating on. So my action item here is, when you are doing something that requires concentration, turn it off. You ready for a big one? Try it for an hour. Try it for 1 hour. Turn off the email for an hour. Now, I've had people do this, and literally some people tell me that they believe they're getting withdrawal symptoms because they're not getting the constant pinging of their emails. And when they turn it back on, they think, oh, I'm going to have 117 messages and people are going to be panicked. And guess what? They turn it back on. They have 3 messages and no one cares because I got a newsflash for you, people. No one cares about you as much as you care about you. The world continues to spin without you constantly feeling like you need to connect with other people. So our 3 major distractions are humans, the telephone, and email. And if you want to have a highly productive day where you are very focused on those 3 absolutely critical items, what I highly recommend that you do is you work on eliminating some of these distractions. Okay, now, here's what I'm going to do. I want to talk about the final concept here. And the final concept is, I want you at the end of the day to recognize that there's one final step that will help you significantly improve the amount of productive work you complete each day in the office, and that's reflecting. Now, reflecting does not mean you take out your pink journal and you light a candle and you slip into a warm bath and you write, if people liked you that day. Reflecting is very simply you driving home and just thinking about how'd the day go? How did this day go? So I have a simple action item on this one. At the end of each day, take 5 minutes, maybe less than 5 minutes, using your notebook. At the end of that day, just very simply write down something you will do differently tomorrow. Something I'll do differently tomorrow, or something that I learned from today. I learned that when I am preparing for a huge meeting the next day, it's extremely important for me to not allow my assistant to walk in my office for 30 minutes. A big one that I learned many, many years ago that I would say I'm 99% cured of this is when someone sends me a spreadsheet and says, hey, can you check over the spreadsheet real quickly for me? I recognize that what I will definitely not do is open the spreadsheet because I'm kind of a spreadsheet nerd. And what happens as a spreadsheet nerd is if you send me a spreadsheet and ask me to look into it a little bit, I'm going to look into your spreadsheet. And 3 hours later, I will have reformatted it with changing the fonts, creating new macros, a whole bunch of crap that doesn't matter. And I will have wasted an enormous amount of time. So I recognize that about myself. And it is after many times of writing down in my book, do not open spreadsheets, I learned. So now that's all we've got for our webinar today. Some very simple fundamentals that hopefully have inspired you to make some simple changes. I've been teaching this stuff for 13 years, and I promise all of this seems so simple. You're going to want to do all of it immediately, but I'm going to tell you something. You're not. Okay? So my recommendation is that you just focus on something simple. What I want you to do now is to, if you have any pressing questions, go ahead and ask that question in the chat area. While you're thinking about those, or if no one has any, I am going to pull up 3 questions that have already been asked prior to this webinar taking place. The first question says, I'm getting people interrupting me throughout the day asking for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever. It's becoming so difficult to stay on task. How can I handle these instances without being off-putting? Well, I described it earlier, and this is Julie asked this question, but let me come back to it again. What you need to do is you need to just sit down with these people and look them in the eye and try not to be condescending like I'm going to sound right now and say, listen, my job, I'm gonna work 8 hours today or 9 or whatever it is. My responsibility is to get the most amount of work done as humanly possible. I have an Achilles heel. I have a weakness, and my weakness is I love talking to other people. I love engaging with, even if it isn't, go ahead and lie. I love to talk to other people. And so what happens is when you want to ask me a question about something, I can't wait to answer your question because I love talking to you, number one. Number two, I love solving your problems. It makes me feel worthy. And unfortunately, what that does is it's killing my productivity because this brilliant coach, speaker, trainer taught me that if you allow yourself to be distracted, it takes your brain between 7 and 21 minutes. Again, reset the expectations. If I'm working on something that requires concentration, my door is shut, whatever it is, just please wait. Now people will say, how can I know when it's time I can talk to you? This is what I typically tell people. Send me an email with whatever questions you've got, and ask me for 10 minutes to talk about it. And we will set up a real quick 10-minute time, or send me a text. And when I've got the time, we will set up a time. And by the way, I'll do the same to you. I'm not just going to wander into your office. The next question comes from Megan, and we've only got a couple more of these. I promise you'll get back to your emails. My question is involving stakeholders. How do I make sure that all stakeholders on a project have found the time to prepare and review materials prior to a deadline? Well, you can scream and yell and curse, Megan. Megan asked this question. Scream, yell, curse. That's one way of doing it. But here's what I recommend. And again, it depends on your position, okay? But I recommend that let me say it this way. The fact of the matter is you can't run out of time. Okay, so when Megan says, how do I make sure that all stakeholders on a project have found the time to prepare and review? What she's indicating is that there is a lack of time. And the concept that there's a lack of time is a misnomer, because there's plenty of time. All right, we have gobs of time. The question is not, do I have enough time? The question is not, did I prioritize? So simply, Megan, the first thing that I would do is I would say to people, listen, I know you've got time to do this. How can I ensure that you will prioritize this over everything else that you have to do? And once you remove the I ran out of time, it's interesting and people begin to change. And Megan, in the beginning, they might just simply begin to tell the truth. Listen, something more important came up. That's better than I ran out of time, because I ran out of time is baloney. So I'm telling you, if you change the vernacular and it seems so subtle, and if you say, can we all agree we've got plenty of time? Let's just all agree we've got plenty of time. So if we don't get something done we agreed to do, it is because we made the decision to do something else. Finally, Gary says, my emails and other inputs require immediate attention, which throws me off my schedule. How do I avoid lowering the bar when reaching my goals? Okay, so Gary, here's the deal. You have a problem, which I have, and which most professionals have, and the problem is this. Your emails and other inputs do not require your immediate attention. They require your attention, but not immediate. You believe it's immediate because other people are telling you it's immediate. What I want you to do is every time someone sends you something, or every time an email, by the way, good God, I hope you'd close your email every now and then, but every time you get that data coming to you, I need you, I need you, I need you, I want you to ask yourself this simple question. Do they need the answer now, or can it wait? Now, here's what Gary's thinking. If Gary could reach his hand through the screen, he would try to choke me right now, because Gary's like, you don't understand my office. If I don't respond to the email, they'll send me a text. If I don't respond to the text, they'll call me. If I don't pick up the phone, they'll come bang on my door. That is when you have the resetting of expectations conversation. Now, Gary, if it's your boss saying this to you and you're afraid he's going to fire you, maybe you don't do this with your boss. However, I've seen a lot of bosses change their productivity. I don't interrupt my staff when it just comes into my head, because it's my money. Okay, if my staff is unproductive, it's me losing money on their productivity. So Gary, simply what I would say is begin to rethink about what is everything so immediate. Now, Gary, if in fact everything requires your immediate attention, then you have the type of job that requires immediate attention on everything. I don't know what it is you do, but if your job requires that you have immediate attention on every single thing, well, that's the job. That's the nature of the job, okay? And then you're gonna have to come in early or stay late. Every now and then a receptionist will say to me, some companies, they give their receptionists extra work because the phone doesn't ring all the time. And then the companies get furious when the receptionist doesn't get all the work done. And I sit them down and I say, you have to allow this individual time to focus, because you're giving them projects that require focus. Yeah, but CJ, they're not on the phone all the time. I get it. But if you give them a project that takes an hour, and in that hour, the phone rings 6 times, that project will now take a bare minimum of 3 hours because of the distractions. So if you want this human being to get something done, you have to give them time when no one is allowed to interrupt them. And it's as simple as that. Now, people, I see we have no more questions right now. Certainly you can email me any questions. What we've done is we've gone through a quick webinar here on some really fundamental, important topics. First thing I want to say is I feel real blessed and honored that everyone agreed to spend some time with us today. Michael, my director of marketing, is going to email out a link that's going to have a link to this webinar. So you can listen to it again. You can give it to someone else to listen to. You can email it to all those people that are driving you nuts and tell them to listen to it. Wouldn't that be great? They'd listen to it and then they're going to want to kill me. Or you can just do whatever it is you want with it. Number two, we have a new digital class that we're calling a mastermind class, and it's for really busy professionals who would like to figure out a way to get more balance in their lives while still accomplishing a ton. Okay, because it can be done. And we're going to roll this mastermind class out in 2017. It's a monthly class where you participate on a weekly basis at your own pace. It's basically taking everything that I've been teaching people for the last 13 years, and we're going to open it up in a very short time period and then close it. So we'll probably have it open and close within a week. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to see if anyone would like to be on the waiting list for this class, so you're guaranteed to get in, because we're going to cap it at a certain amount. And the reason we're going to cap it is because I want to be able to interact with a lot of people. So Michael will also send you a link that will allow you to to sign up for the class. So you can join this master class. So you can get on the waiting list for the class. And then obviously Michael is going to be your direct connection for any questions or comments or anything else that you've got. That's all that I've got today, folks. I'm getting ready to stop our webinar here. I really, really appreciate, oh, and then Michael has just reposted that at the bottom. So if you'd like to, I noticed on the chat area, Michael just put that you can join right there by clicking that. You can go ahead and sign up for that. We'd love for you to do it. And if you have any other questions or comments, go ahead and email Michael. Check out our website for new blogs, new video blogs, new podcasts, all that sort of stuff that we do. If you do nothing else today, just pick one of these things you learned, just one. Put it into practice, and I guarantee next week you'll notice a big difference. Thanks so much, and I hope everyone has a great day.